She stood quietly in the corner of the grand ballroom, holding her own clutch like she didn't belong, while the rest of the guests floated across the marble floor in diamonds and silk. She was mistaken for staff, brushed aside, ignored, and even asked to refill a drink. Whispers followed her, cold glances passed her, and one woman even scoffed. Some people just don't know their place. No one knew her name. No one cared to ask, but what no one realized was that she wasn't just another face at the gala. She was the reason it even existed. The woman they were mocking had built the company from the ground up, brick by brick, late night by late night. And now, standing silently, she watched the room judge her based on appearances alone. Then, just as the CEO stepped onto the stage, everything changed. He raised his glass, glanced in her direction, and with a single sentence shattered every assumption in the room. The crowd froze. Eyes widened. The room fell silent. What he said next turned the night upside down and made everyone realize just how wrong they were. She had been silent all evening. Not because she lacked confidence, but because she had learned long ago that power doesn't always need to announce itself. Years ago, she walked into the same company as an intern, overlooked, underestimated, and barely noticed. But behind the quiet eyes was a mind that saw things others missed. She worked through every department, solved problems no one else dared to touch, and gained the trust of the original founder, the man who would later name her his successor. Tonight, Gala was supposed to celebrate a major merger, a deal that had taken years to negotiate. And yet, the moment she walked in without a flashy designer label or a known face, the crowd decided she didn't fit. The irony wasn't lost on her. As she stood still, whispers grew louder around her. One guest joked loudly about gatecrashers. Another woman whispered to her friend, laughing, she must be someone's assistant. Yet, through it all, she smiled softly because she knew something they didn't. The CEO hadn't spoken her name yet. He was building the moment, setting the stage. And when he finally revealed the truth, it's not just about who she was, but what she owned, everything would change. From across the room, a board member raised an eyebrow, clearly confused. He had been lobbying behind closed doors for months, trying to position his own candidate for ownership. The woman, now standing at the center of attention, had never once shown up to the meetings in flashy cars or headline interviews. She preferred to operate in silence, letting results speak louder than press releases. And that made some people very uncomfortable. Among the guests was Claudia Monroe, high-profile investor who had dismissed the woman weeks earlier in an email, calling her insignificant in big-league conversations. Claudia's smirk from earlier in the evening had faded now, replaced with a tight-lipped expression of unease. She hadn't just misjudged Hirsch, she had underestimated the one person who now held power over her financial future. Meanwhile, a junior employee named David stood near the back, stunned. He recognized her immediately. Years ago, she had once stopped in the hallway to help him carry a stack of reports after everyone else walked past. She never said her title. She just smiled, helped, and left. He realized now that was the owner of the company. But before anyone could react, the CEO leaned closer to the mic. His next words would silence the room. The CEO paused, his hand resting gently on the podium, scanning the crowd. The air in the ballroom grew heavy, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting. His eyes settled on her, and in that instant, the whispers stopped. A few people turned to look at her, confused. Others began putting pieces together, but it was too late for damage control. The humiliation, the gossip, the judgment, they had all played out in front of her, unchecked. He took a slow breath. "Some of you may not know who she is," he began, voice steady, commanding. "But you should." Murmurs rippled again through the room, but they were quickly hushed. Everyone was listening now, even those who had scoffed at her only minutes ago. At a table near the front, one executive shifted uncomfortably. He had once dismissed her proposal in a meeting, claiming it lacked vision. Another woman, who had barely hidden her distaste earlier, now clutched her wineglass tighter. They all knew whatever came next would redefine everything. Security guards by the door straightened. Cameras from the press lifted. And in the middle of the ballroom, the woman they all ignored stood quietly, watching. Her expression calm, but her presence undeniable. The truth was just seconds away. Just as the CEO opened his mouth to reveal her identity, a man from the far end of the ballroom stepped forward, interrupting the moment. His presence sent a ripple through the crowd. It was Richard Vansta, former co-founder of the company, who had vanished from the public eye years ago after a scandal forced him into silence. No one had seen him at any recent corporate events, and his appearance tonight wasn't on the guest list. He adjusted his cufflinks, then spoke loud enough for all to hear. "Before you say her name," he said, looking directly at the CEO, "maybe you should tell them what really happened with the board vote 3 months ago." The room froze again, but this time the energy shifted from curiosity to pure tension. People exchanged glances. A board vote. 3 months ago. The CEO's expression tightened slightly. But he didn't speak. Richard walked toward the stage with quiet confidence, each step building pressure like a drumbeat. "You want to talk about ownership?" he said, now looking at the woman. "Then, maybe we should talk about what you signed and what they buried." Gasps echoed. She didn't move, but for the first time all evening, her calm expression cracked just slightly. The room stood in stunned silence. All eyes were now on her. She didn't flinch, didn't step back, even as Richard's words echoed across the ballroom. The CEO, still frozen behind the podium, finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "She didn't just sign the vote, she led it," he said. "She uncovered your offshore accounts, Richard. The board expelled you quietly to protect the company's name, and she was the one who made that decision." Richard's face darkened. "You'd think they'll believe that?" he snapped. "That she took me down?" But then the woman stepped forward. For the first time all evening, she spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was weight behind every word. "I didn't come tonight to be recognized," she said. "I came to remind you that leadership isn't about status or spotlight. It's about integrity. And you lost yours the day you chose profit over people." The crowd erupted into hushed chatter. Claudia lowered her head. David stood taller. The board members, once skeptical, looked stunned, and just when it felt like the room had heard it all, the twist came. She turned to the CEO. "Thank you for the introduction," she said, then faced the crowd. "But I won't be leading the company anymore." A beat passed. "Because I just sold it." A wave of shock swept through the ballroom. The whispers returned, louder this time, thick with disbelief. She smiled gently, her eyes scanning the room one last time, met the faces that once looked down on her, the voices that dismissed her, and the hands that never reached to help. "I sold the company to a foundation," she continued, "one that invests in women-led startups, underrepresented founders, and ethical leadership." Gasps turned to applause, flow at first, then building. David clapped, his eyes glassy with pride. Even some of the board members nodded, understanding now that she had never been chasing power. She was building a legacy. Richard stood frozen, defeated not by scandal, but by truth. Claudia walked out quietly, avoiding every glance, and the CEO. He stepped aside, offering her the stage fully now. No longer to announce her, but to honor her. She didn't stay long after. No victory speech, no farewell toast. Just a quiet exit into the night, the same way she had come in, simple, composed, and strong. And those who had judged her based on her dress, her silence, or her status would never forget the moment they learned the hard way. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one no one saw coming.